Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Yema Wristmaster Traveller. This watch is available from yema.com for €890. Yema have a rich brand heritage. They were founded in 1948 in France, and they currently make their watches and their in-house calibers in Morteau in France. So firstly, let's look at the leather travel roll that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a leather travel roll, which is housed inside this cardboard box. One removes the lid, which is a snug fit, pulls down the flap, and I'll take out the travel roll to show it to you. So, chocolate tone to the leather, and it's nice to see genuine leather rather than PU leather or vinyl used. And as you can see, it's fully perforated and embossed on the top of the flap with the Yema emblem and also Yema text logo. Brass rivets which secures the flap, and the interior is fully upholstered with a contrasting velour fabric to a good standard. The watch sits on a padded pillow cushion in the base, which is also upholstered to a good standard with contrasting velour fabric. So good presentation, and an example to other micro brands at this price point of €890 of how to get presentation correct. Yema could have used the default option of an inexpensive plastic or cardboard watch box, but this is a genuine leather travel roll which is very aesthetically pleasing and good quality. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 39mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 43.5mm, a thickness of 12.5mm. The integrated bracelet tapers at the widest point of the integrated lugs, 23.8mm down to 20mm at the 2-button push butterfly clasp. The 2-button push butterfly clasp is signed to a good standard with the Yema emblem engraved and also Yema text logo with high definition engraving. 2-button push triggers are partially recessed on the left and right hand flanks, and they have nice spring-loaded action to them. We have a double dome sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished applied indices and the silver mirror polished dolphin handset. The hands are correctly proportioned, they're long enough to extend to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring, and the hour hand also extends to the silver applied indices. Interesting detail because the second hand isn't silver mirror polished as per the hour and minute hand, which are dolphin hands. The second hand is contrasting white, and the white second hand matches the aesthetic of the white minute ticks on the chapter ring and the white text on the dial. It also enhances the legibility because there's a good contrast between the white second hand and the striped Geneva dial. So my favourite aspect of the piece are the Geneva stripes on the dial, which has a metallic hologram effect, as you can see. When I tilt it at an oblique angle, you can see the Geneva stripes on the dial catch the light. So they have a nice metallic sheen, and also they're green, and I like the way the green stripes catch the light. Just absolutely gorgeous. It does look like a hologram, the way they've done the milled stripes on the dial. Nice 3D effect to it, and it does add interest to the piece. The bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel, brushed satin finished, and you can see interesting design because it has milled slots in it. Now, the bezel is inspired by a vintage Yema piece, a vintage Submarine piece from the 1980s, which also had similar milled slots in the bezel. So it's good that they've incorporated that vintage aesthetic and that design elements of the 1980s Submarine, and one could consider this Wristmaster Traveller to be a modern day heritage reissue of it due to the same design of bezel. No sharp edges to the milled slots, they've been deburred and chamfered very well, and the bezel is nice and low profile. I like the way the double dome sapphire crystal is very low profile, it almost looks flat, and it doesn't add significant thickness to it, although it is 2.2mm thick, and the AR coating on it works very well on the underside, and because it's double dome rather than single domed, it doesn't have a distortion or magnification effect when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle. I like the edge of it, which projects above the stainless steel bezel, because the bevel on the edge of the sapphire crystal catches the light, and it does look very good looking. So, mirror polished chamfer to the stainless steel bezel, and that contrasts with the edges of it, which are brushed satin finished, and also the top side of it, which is brushed satin finished with the milled slots. So, very aesthetically pleasing. Now, as I've detailed, integrated lugs, and at the widest point they are 23.8, and then they gradually taper down to the 2-button push butterfly clasp to 20. So for 39mm, the integrated taper does work very well. 23.8 down to 20mm does look good. The case isn't too thick. The thing I like about it is 12.5 is good. Anything below 13mm will easily slip underneath the shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, and that's the benefit of this being 100 meters rather than 200 meters water resistant. The crystal is 2.2mm, but the case back isn't too thick. So I'll show you the clasp. 2 button push triggers to the butterfly clasp, both halves open easily. Solid milled internals, as you can see, and the quality of the mirror polishing to the top side, underside and flanks is absolutely flawless. They've also engraved the left hand portion with stainless steel, and the quality of the finishing is very good. No sharp edges to the top edge or under edge of the flanks. Doesn't have sharp corners to the centre section, which is good. Let's check the hinge pins. Doesn't have too much play, lateral, longitudinal, side to side or up and down play in the left hand hinge pin. Let's check the internal hinge pin. Articulates smoothly, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Doesn't have excessive lateral, longitudinal, side to side or up and down play, so the tolerances are good. Let's check the right hand internal hinge pin. Articulates smoothly, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Doesn't have excessive play. Lastly, let's check the right hand hinge pin. Again, nice and tight, doesn't have excessive play in any direction. So again, this is an example to other brands in the mid-tier at the €890 price point of how to get butterfly clasp execution correct. Good tolerances, build quality, quality control. The 4 hinge pins in the butterfly clasp are very well machined. The tolerances are tight. They have good interference fits. All 4 are good. They don't wobble. It's not a sloppy bracelet. Quality of the finishing is good. No sharp edges to it, no burrs. Good firm resistance to the 2 button push triggers. Now, the thing to note is it's not handed. You don't have to close the left or the right hand portion of it first. It doesn't overlap, so it doesn't matter whether you close the left or the right first. Snaps shut with a nice positive click. Opens up with a nice smooth action. So I like the firm resistance to the spring-loaded triggers, and it snaps shut with nice positive clicks. Quality is very good because we don't have a large gap in between the left and the right hand portion. The end links in the bracelet are well executed. You can see there's a nice fine gap in between the 2 halves of the butterfly clasp. Now, with regards to the crown, solid 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finished, and it's got a matte blasted effect to it with a domed profile to it, and it's embossed with the Yema Y emblem, as you can see, to a good standard. It's got a nice chamfer to the end of it, so no sharp tips to the teeth of the coin edge finishing, and I like the matte finish to it. It's very aesthetically pleasing. It complements the matte brushed satin finishing to the crown guards and the flanks of the case. Now, it's partially recessed, but it is correctly proportioned because it's a push-pull crown, and in the closed position, we can manually wind the Yema caliber Yema 2000 to its maximum 42-hour power reserve. So that's the benefit of it not being a screw-down crown. You don't need to unscrew it. In the closed position, because it's a push-pull crown, you can manually wind the piece daily, if necessary, without unscrewing the crown and pulling it out. Feels nice and smooth. Now, in terms of resistance, it feels very similar to a Sellita SW200-1 or an ETA 2824-2. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up with the caliber Yema 2000. Nice firm resistance to it. The gearing feels smooth, and I like the feeling of it. You can feel the tension gradually building up. It's got a nice smooth manual winding action, so it's very pleasant to manually wind. Now, pulling it out to the first click position is the final click. The benefit of the Yema caliber Yema 2000 is it is a no-date complication movement, which is made in-house in Morteau in France by Yema themselves. So we don't have a date wheel, there's no date window, no date complication with the caliber Yema 2000. So to hack the movement, you simply pull out the crown to the first click, and as you can see, if you look at the white contrasting second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead. So it's possible to hack the movement and set the time precisely to the second with the caliber Yema 2000. Nice firm resistance to the gearing, minimal friction. It feels smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise. One can feel the gearing meshing very well. Feels like a nice, reliable, robust movement. Quality control and build quality feels good. Feels nice and smooth through the 360 degrees, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. Now, the thing I like about it is there's minimal backplay. When you rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, unlike other movements, you don't have to take up a lot of slack. When you rotate the crown, the minute hand quickly responds, so it doesn't have a lot of slack in the gearing to take up. It's very responsive, so it's very well made. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the contrasting white second hand begins to sweep around the dial with a characteristic 4 Hz sweep. This is something I particularly like about the Yema caliber Yema 2000. It runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. And the benefit of that is you get this nice smooth 4 Hz sweep rather than the stutter or judder of a 3 Hz movement running at 21,600 vibrations per hour respectively. So a nice smooth 4 Hz sweep to it, and I like the contrast of the white second hand, and the length of it is correct because it extends all the way to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring around the circumference of the dial. So feels good to manually wind, hacking works well, and setting the time is an absolute pleasure. So let's look at the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back. Now the interesting thing is, if you look at the shield, which is embossed in the centre, it's not engraved, it's actually pressed. So they forge the case backs using a hydraulic press. Now if you look at the quality of the definition of the Yema shield emblem, it's very high definition and crisp. It's not blurry, it's very sharp in terms of definition, but it's pressed into the forged case back using a hydraulic press rather than engraving it. Now the benefit of using a hydraulic press to forge the emblem, the shield emblem, rather than engraving it is you do not get any sharp edges. The embossing is lovely and smooth. Now, when you wear this against the wrist for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, unlike an engraved, embossed logo or emblem, sometimes with engraving, when it's very deep like this, you get sharp edges, but this is embossed with pressing, and the benefit of the forging is that it's very smooth. No sharp edges to it whatsoever, but it's got a nice 3D effect. It's very deep. You can see the embossing is very deep. And it's nice to have that heritage Yema shield embossed in the back of the forged case back. Now, the case back is relatively flat. It doesn't have a bubble back profile to it, and again, that's the benefit of using the in-house caliber Yema 2000. It's a very slim and low profile movement. It's thinner than the Solita SW200-1, and it's thinner than the ETA 2824-2. So low profile movement. It's also got a very low profile rotor, and therefore one doesn't need a thick bubble back case back in order to provide adequate clearance. It's a very flat case back, and the screw down case back provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters, which is strong specification for a daily wear piece. Remember, this is not a dive watch. We do not need 200 meters, but the screw down case back is good. They could have used a pressed on case back with 50 meters, for example. 100 meters is excessive specification for a daily wear piece, but very strong specification. So concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the outer portion of the screw down case back. The circumference is engraved with high definition engraving with a specification to a good standard. Milled slots don't have any sharp edges or burrs. They've been deburred and chamfered very well. So the quality of the forged case back is outstanding. The quality of the machining to it is outstanding. No sharp edges, and I like the finishing and also the fact it's low profile. It does not add significant thickness. This is only 12.5 millimeters thick. The underside to the head of the piece is finished very well with a brushed satin finish, longitudinally brushed. Nice mirror polished chamfers and bevels to the undercuts to the flanks, as you can see. If you look at the underside to the case, the full length of the flanks has a nice large mirror polished bevel on the left hand flank, and also on the crown guard side we have that full large mirror polished bevel underneath the crown guards, which runs the full length of the case, and that bevel deburrs and chamfers the head of the piece, so there's no sharp edges, no sharp undercuts to dig into the wrist or scratch the wrist. It's very well finished. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report it just fits my 8-inch wrist, but it's a tight fit. I can't slide an index finger beneath it, so really 7.5 inches is the maximum for comfort, because this doesn't allow any room for wrist expansion in warmer weather or when you are active. So 7.5 is the maximum. If you have a larger than 7.5 inch wrist, for comfort and wrist expansion you're going to need an additional 1 or 2 links put in. I can just close it, but 8 inches is the absolute maximum this will fit. But of course, for the majority of collectors with a 6 to 7.5 inch wrist, the integrated bracelet will fit you no problem whatsoever. So, compact case, fits very snug to the wrist. Now, it doesn't have female pivoted end links, as you can see. The integrated links are male end links, but we don't have a large gap beneath the tips of the lugs. So, the angular lugs, they angle down around the wrist very well, and the top of the case has a curved radial profile to the integrated lugs. So very snug fit to the wrist, beautiful luster to the bracelet, as you can see. I love the fine grained satin finishing to it. It's just absolutely gorgeous. We've also got a nice large mirror polished bevel to the edge of the integrated links, which catches the light, but they also do a good job of deburring and chamfering the edge of the links so they don't have any sharp top edge. Just gorgeous luster the way the integrated bracelet catches, and also the hidden butterfly clasp, as you can see. Finishing is outstanding. Now, lug to lug measurement is very compact at 43.5. To put that into perspective, I often refer to the sweet spot for lug to lug measurement as being 48mm in my previous reviews. 48mm is the sweet spot because it will fit you regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. So at 43.5 lug to lug, it's a very compact case, particularly suitable if you have a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches respectively. Even on a larger wrist of 7 to 8 it will fit, as you can see, because the integrated male end links do extend the 43.5 end link slightly larger, so the integrated bracelet will fit a 7 to 8 inch wrist as well as a 6 to 7. Now the thing to note is this is a heavy piece for a 39mm. It's 171 grams and it does feel a hefty piece with all the links, but bear in mind if you have a smaller wrist you're going to be removing 4 or 5 or even 6 links, and that will reduce it down to circa 150 to 150 grams, 155 grams. Now the sweet spot for comfort level, if you're going to wear a piece for long periods of time such as 8 to 12 hours per day, for a 39mm on a bracelet the sweet spot is 150 grams or less. At 151 it exceeds that by 21 grams. This bracelet does have a lot of meat on it. 23.8 is a wide bracelet width at the integrated lugs, and it does quickly taper down to 20, but I think they could have further enhanced it. For example, if they used a 20 to 16 taper or 22 to 18 taper, that would have reduced a lot of the meat, because the head of the piece isn't very heavy, it's the bracelet. It's a very wide integrated bracelet. 23.8 to 20 does add significant heft. That is the real reason why this is 171 grams of heft. So, heavy piece, but does feel very comfortable due to the profile of it and the short lug to lug. It's a snug fit, nice flat case back, and the thing is, the bracelet does articulate very well. So it wraps around the wrist very well for an integrated bracelet. It does feel very comfortable, rather like an oyster bracelet in terms of articulation and also fit. It feels smooth and it wraps around the wrist very comfortably. No stiff links, it doesn't kink. So very aesthetically pleasing piece. I like the very low profile double dome sapphire crystal. It almost looks flat, that's how low profile it is. And needless to say, at 12.5mm, it's below the 13mm sweet spot. So this will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, and that makes it an ideal daily wear piece. I absolutely love the Geneva stripes on the green dial, and the way the dial changes from a dark green, which almost looks black, to a more brighter green when you tilt the piece at an oblique angle. It looks like a hologram the way it changes colour, so it's absolutely gorgeous. The dolphin hands, the mirror polishing to the indices, they catch the light very well, as you can see. When you tilt it at an oblique angle, the AR coating works well, and then you get that nice silver mirror polished contrast of the dolphin hands and the silver mirror polished indices. So the legibility is very good. So comfortable piece to wear despite the heft, but bear in mind if you remove 4 or 5 links you're going to reduce it to circa 155 or 150 grams, so it will become comfortable, but it is a heavy piece. So let's do a lume test and we'll see how the lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it is okay. The handset is very good. We're looking at BGW9 dots around the indices on the dial, and also the dolphin hands are fully lumed with BGW9. Now, interestingly, the contrasting white second hand is also fully lumed with BGW9, which is a pleasant surprise. I expected it just to be white without any lume. So, legibility of the handset is very good. Proportions are also good. You can differentiate between the longer dolphin minute hand and the shorter dolphin hour hand. I like that they fully lumed the white second hand with BGW9 because you can see the second hand sweeping around the dial. But, however, there is room for improvement. It looks like 3 to 4 layers of BGW9 versus 5 to 6. Now, I appreciate with the dots of lume on the circumference of the dial, on the chaptering at the sides of the indices, it's difficult to apply 5 to 6 layers. There's not a great deal of depth. It's hard to apply several layers because there isn't much space there. There's not a large plot. For example, if they fully loomed the indices which are applied, yes, they could easily apply 5 to 6. So they've just put dots of lume, which is okay performance, but it's 3 to 4. So it's not glowing very brightly. The exciter isn't very bright. Looking at the handset, it's better. We're still looking at 3 to 4 layers versus 5 to 6. Again, the problem with Dolphin hands, rather than Baton hands or Mercedes hands, for example, they're not as large. They don't allow for large plots or a large area for 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 to be applied. They deserve credit for applying some BGW9 to the Dolphin hands. It is difficult because they're very slender, but I think they could add another 2 layers. 5 to 6 would make the exciter glow brighter. The second hand is very good. You can see the contrast very well of the sweeping second hand, and it's nice that it is fully loomed. They could have just left it in white paint, so they deserve credit for fully looming the second hand, but again, we're looking at 3 to 4 layers. So there is a cost-cutting measure with regards to production cost. This is 3 to 4, it's not 5 to 6 layers of BGW9, which would be much brighter. I also think they could apply more on the dots around the circumference of the dial on the chaptering, because the dots they've applied with 3 to 4, they give negligible performance, they don't really add anything to the dial, they're fading very quickly. So I would describe it as okay performance, but there is room for improvement. 5 to 6 would really enhance it with a brighter exciter in the BGW9. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So, as I've detailed, Yema produced their watches in Morteau in France, and they also produced their in-house calibers in Morteau in France, such as this Yema caliber Yema 2000. It has 29 joules and it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. It has 42-hour power reserve, which is perfectly acceptable, hand winding and hacking, which work very well, as I've demonstrated. The stated accuracy is plus or minus 10 seconds per day, so very good. Now, they regulate their movements in 5 positions to plus or minus 10, but often they exceed that stated accuracy of plus or minus 10. This one is regulated very well. It's running consistently at plus 2 seconds per day when fully wound to its maximum 42-hour power reserve. Plus 2 is actually well within chronometer grade limits of minus 4 to plus 6. So, the Yema 2000 is a reliable, well-proven French-made caliber, made in-house by Yema in Morteau. No reliability issues reported whatsoever. The build's quality control, finishing, materials are all excellent. So it feels good to manually wind. The hacking works well, and 42 hours is perfectly acceptable power reserve. One thing I like about it, as I've detailed, is it has a 4 Hz sweep of the second hand rather than stuttering or juddering as per a 3 Hz movement. So I like that it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour. So accurate movement, plus 2 seconds, is outstanding. It is chronometer accurate, and it is a credible alternative to the Sellita SW200-1 or the ETA 2824-2, which one would expect in the mid-tier at this price point of €890. It is good to see a French-made piece using a French-made in-house caliber made by Yema themselves, rather than just buying in Sellita SW200-1s from Switzerland, for example, or ETA 2824-2s respectively. So in-house caliber at this price point is very impressive at €890. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, mid-tier piece, the price point is €890. I'm going to declare it good quality and I'm going to declare it good value at €890. I'm not going to say excellent quality and excellent value at €890 because the lume is disappointing. It is the one negative of the piece, which is a real shame because everything else is very good. Quality of the finishing to the head of the piece, the bezel, the case back, the integrated bracelet, the clasp are all 10 out of 10. No sharp edges to it. The bracelet articulates smoothly and the links do not feel stiff, they don't kink, and we don't have any sharp edges to the top side or the underside. So the quality of the finishing to the head of the piece and the bracelet are fantastic. Crown feels nice and smooth, and the manual winding and hacking work very well. The in-house caliber Yema 2000 is outstanding. It justifies the price point, but the 3 to 4 layers of BGW9 are the one negative which is not acceptable. in the mid-tier at €890. They need to upgrade the quality in terms of application. They need to put 5 to 6 layers on the Dolphin hands and the dots on the indices on the chapter ring. Then I would upgrade it to saying excellent quality and excellent value. It's just a shame that one weak point, the Lume, needs increasing in performance. Other than that, there are no negatives to the piece. It's outstanding, and I do absolutely love the Geneva stripes on the green dial. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So great looking piece, comfort level is good, feel good factor is good. So I'm going to highly recommend it to you for consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Yema Wristmaster Traveller. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.